It is 8 o'clock. You are watching the UK Tonight here on Sky News, and this is the scene at the Houses of Parliament tonight as landmarks around the UK are lit up to mark Holocaust Memorial Day. It is 81 years since the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, and every year on the 27th of January, the world remembers the 6 million Jews killed by Nazi Germany. And as with every year, it has been a moving day for survivors and their families, with the King and Queen meeting some of them at a reception at Buckingham Palace earlier today. And senior ministers were moved to tears as a 95-year-old survivor addressed a cabinet meeting, urging the government to do what needs to be done to tackle rising anti-Semitism. It's thought that there are almost 200,000 Jewish Holocaust survivors alive today, and many of them have dedicated their lives to sharing their stories, making sure the generations that follow never forget the horrors that were inflicted on their people and the evil that humans are capable of. Well, we are privileged to be joined in the studio tonight by John Dubai, who lived through the Holocaust as a child, and Karen Pollock, the Chief Executive of the Holocaust Educational Trust. Thank you so much both for being here with me this evening on what is a very poignant and busy day, because today really is the world paying attention to the horrors of the past. And John, I just wanted to start by asking you how you've marked today and how you've reflected 81 years on from the Holocaust.
Well, I was actually thinking, what was I doing 81 years ago? And 81 years ago, I was in a house with a central courtyard, which was filled with Soviet soldiers. And we were able to eat, which we weren't able to do for quite a few days. So the joy of eating overcame everything at that moment.
I mean, Karen, in just a couple of sentences, John really has encapsulated what today is about for survivors. It is the simple horrors of so many of the survivors. John's family were not taken to concentration camps, but lived out their own horrors in Hungary. And today you have been to Cabinet, you've been to Buckingham Palace with other survivors like John, talking about memories and what went on during the Holocaust. What's today been like?
You know, listening to John just now, it made me, or reminded me, for Holocaust survivors, they remember what they've been through every day of their lives, and they don't need reminding. But what they're doing by speaking to you this evening, sharing their testimony in schools around the country, speaking to the media, speaking to the cabinet, what they're doing is helping us, helping our generation and future generations know what they've been through. And you know, it gives us the opportunity to say we will remember and we pledge to remember. Today's been, yes, it's been busy, but it's been really important because shining a spotlight on this cause, on this episode in history, it's important for the sake of remembering. But as Marla Tribbish said this morning to the Cabinet, we've got to understand that it's not just about the past. Remembering meaningfully means we have to speak out against anti-Semitism today. There's so much I could say, but what I would say is today, what makes me feel very proud is when you see Their Majesties, the King and Queen, greet survivors with such affection and respect and admiration. What that means to a survivor who never in their wildest dreams would have imagined they'd be walking through the gates of Buckingham Palace. After everything they've been through and everything they've lost, it says something, it's a validation, really, isn't it? And, you know, we as a country, you know, defeated Nazism, you know, the Second World War, the proud history to say, you know, we're against it. But I think for many survivors, and I can't speak for John and I won't speak for you, but for many survivors, there is a worry about have we learnt what's happening today? What are we witnessing? Whether the events of Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester, the attack on Jewish people there, or at Bondi Beach at Hanukkah in December last year, it suggests that anti-Semitism is alive and well. And so I would hope that today is not only about paying tribute to the incredible survivors who are willing and brave enough to retell their stories, their painful memories, and not only to give a voice to the voiceless, the 6 million Jewish men, women and children, but also an opportunity for us to say what never again actually means. And that means taking action against the hate and the anti-Semitism we see today.
Yeah, John, I'll bring you in on that point. Anti-Semitism in the UK, do you see it on the rise? You live in London. What have you seen on your doorstep? Because I know you've experienced anti-Semitism on your doorstep in recent years, which must be extremely upsetting given what you've lived through.
I live about 50 metres from the River Thames, and there are benches there which were marked, daubed with paint, questioning the truth that the Holocaust even happened. And I went home immediately, got a scrubbing brush and started to scrub the benches, because we can't let this pass.
Does it trouble you, what you're seeing in the UK right now?
It is, because it is a poison which will spread if we don't constantly look out for it and oppose it.
And not just today, Karen, but every day. I know that, you know, particularly as part of your organisation and the work that John does in sharing his story with children and adults alike, because, you know, lessons are there to be learned for all ages. But this is a message that has to cut through at all times.
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing more painful than to think about Holocaust survivors who've been through the very worst, who've seen where anti-Semitism can ultimately lead, to talk about seeing it today, and for John to go and scrub...
To see it, you know, nearly 60, 70 years later from when he was a boy, seeing it the first time.
I find it very hard to... I think it's just a difficult thing to contemplate, and we should all be asking ourselves, how is that possible? How is that where we are today? But I would say on Holocaust Memorial Day, and this year the theme is about bridging generations, and I think it is important, whilst absolutely recognising the challenges we have today, and I think you'd feel like this too, John.
Yes.
That we reach so many young people. John speaks to so many young people in schools, and as do many survivors. And we arrange for young people to visit Auschwitz and become witnesses themselves, and they are our ambassadors. So there are these generations who are going to carry the baton.
And the children don't understand it yet, John, but they will when they're older. It is a privilege to hear a first-hand account of what you went through. What do you talk to the children about when you go into schools to talk to them? Because your family were living in Hungary, and as a young boy, you actually remember the arrival of the Nazis in Budapest and how your life changed. It was the slow creep, the anti-Semitism, and then when they arrived, your life changed completely.
Well, my mother sent me out to a shop the day after the German army occupied Budapest, and I met a school friend, and I said, I'm looking forward to going back to school. And he said he was going to go back to school, but I was not, because I'm a stinking, rotten Jew. And as it happens, I was christened Roman Catholic. So he said to me, my father told me you're a dirty, stinking Jew. And the shock was so great that I cried for hours on end. And I remember that every day, even today.
And your family, against such a horrific backdrop of what was happening in Hungary, were one of the lucky ones, because there were mass deportations of Jews from Hungary to Auschwitz, Birkenau. I mean, there were hundreds of thousands of concentration camps, but that by far the biggest and the most prolific. How did your family escape that? And what was life like for you trying to stay together?
Well, we lost five members of the family who were murdered in the gas chambers. 4 members, grown-up men, were in forced labour camps, including my father. But compared to many others, it's a small loss. Many other families lost 30, 40 members of one family.
I want to talk about the lessons and the stories that survivors like John tell children and adults. And like I said, it's not just about today, but reminders and remembrances every day. Given education and how children are learning now, a lot of it is done online. And I just wonder, Karen, particularly from your organisation's point of view, how concerned you are about the rise of artificial intelligence and deep fake videos in telling the story of the Holocaust or rewriting the story of the Holocaust, and how dangerous that can be.
Well, I think that we definitely have a serious challenge at confronting us, because there's this huge attempt to distort history, misinformation at the click of a button. It's really at young people's fingertips.
Conspiracy theories spreading online at a rapid rate.
Absolutely. And so how does a young person navigate that? And also, you know, we want to encourage young people to have apply critical thinking and explore and source materials. But sometimes if you are overwhelmed with information that you regard as likely to be true, you form opinions. So there is a huge challenge, and there's a huge amount of hate online, and I think it is a really difficult place for young people. But I would say artificial intelligence is not always a danger. Something that we've launched over a year ago now is something called Testimony 360, where a small number of Holocaust survivors have been interviewed. They've answered up to 1,000 questions in a studio. And then using our AI-powered search engines, you can then ask them any question and you'll get their authentic answer. So that even when the survivors are no longer with us, you can sit at your laptop and have an interactive conversation with the survivor where you only get their true response about what they went through. And we've designed that because we're very aware that we're at this critical juncture, that survivors are in their 80s and 90s. Sadly, they are becoming fewer and frailer. They've told us they can't do this forever, and we know that. So I just would say that we're trying to create ways of creating resources and using innovation that will be accessible to young people. And John, you've been part of that, and you know that it's going to be a very be such a profound thing for young people in the future.
And your story will continue, John.
May I just mention briefly a fight that many of us have against countries. There are a number of countries in Europe who actually deny what happened. So we have not only fight against anti-Semitism, but we also have a battle against the distortion of history. And that fight must also continue into the future.
John, it feels only right that we give you the final thought, so thank you very much for that. And as you said, still work to be done. And together, along with the other survivors, you are doing great work for now and in the future. And as you said, preserving those stories, so that they are the testament that people turn to when they look for education and to learn about what has happened. And John Dubai, it's an absolute privilege to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming in, and Karen Pollock as well. Thank you very much from the Holocaust Educational Trust. Thank you. I really appreciate your time. Right, let's have a look at a big story today that's happening in Devon. 2 severe flood warnings in place, meaning there is a danger to life. This is all as a result of Storm Chandra, which is bringing heavy rain and strong winds to the UK and also to Ireland. Hundreds of schools were forced to close in the southwest of England. Further disruption to rail services and on the roads, with police in some parts of Devon advising against all travel. Sky's Stephen Murphy has this report.
The power of Storm Chandra evident in the southwest. Waves smash ashore at Dawlish Town in Devon, a county still reeling from the extensive damage caused by Storm Goretti earlier this month. The relentless rainfall caused the River Axe to burst its banks. The town of Axminster bore the brunt, with cars submerged and residents scrambling to evacuate the worst-hit homes.
And as you can see, it's flooded. It's up to my waist with water. All my furniture's down, all in my kitchen, can't get downstairs. And yeah, so I've had to climb out the window.
Firefighters in Devon and Somerset say they rescued people from around 25 vehicles that were submerged. There were no casualties reported, but authorities again urged motorists not to drive through floodwater. Famously resilient, these farmers swapped tractors for a more unusual mode of transport to get to work.
This area is a floodplain, so it floods probably once or twice a year, and it gets as bad as this probably once every 15 years. We've got videos of my dad water skiing 30 years ago on the fields here.
The River Otter reached its highest ever recorded level, breaking a record that had stood for more than a quarter of a century. For many motorists, the danger was too much to go on.
The road is flooded, and without height markers, no way of telling how deep it is, and can't go for it, can't risk it.
In other areas, snow was the main hazard. Here in County Durham, there were blizzard-like conditions, closing roads and schools, combined with winds that toppled trees. Across the Irish Sea, Chandra created havoc both north and south of the border. In Dublin, many suburban areas flooded, with firefighters rescuing some motorists from submerged cars and traffic chaos lasting the entire day. Several days of incessant rain hit mountainous areas like County Wicklow hard. Here in the town of Aughrim, the river broke its banks in the early hours and swept into homes.
When we opened the door, the river burst through the front door and flooded the house, and we quickly closed the door, but we could hear the loud sound of the river racing down in a torrent, and we were so lucky that it didn't get too bad in our house.
David says he's lost most of his possessions, apart from some documents and clothes.
And how are you feeling today?
Still in shock, to be honest with you, I'm going to have to digest all of this for myself. And
can you see a future living here, living this close to a river?
Not now after this. No, I have to consider now where I'm going to live.
Even as residents across large swathes of Ireland and the UK start to clean up, the fear is there's more to come. With further bad weather forecast and excess water still working its way through river systems, the effects of Storm Chandra may be felt for some time yet. Stephen Murphy, Sky News.
Well, for more on this developing story, we're joined by Stephen Hole, who is the control manager at Devon and Cornwall 4x4 Response, who responds to calls via the police in the area. And really good of you to take the time tonight on what you hope won't be a busy evening for you, but what are you preparing for?
Well, we're preparing to provide support to the emergency services across Devon at the moment. The floodwaters do seem to be receding this evening, so hopefully they will be standing us down shortly. But we're going to stay in an elevated state because we know there's more bad weather to come.
Yeah, I mean, look, that is some good news, but what we do know about the weather, it can change quickly. And this is the third storm that has hit your area within the last few weeks. What have you been having to contend with?
So, yeah, we've had, obviously, Storm Goretti, which hit Cornwall fairly badly. Myself, I lost power, I lost water during that, but we had our members out and about supporting the local communities as best we could during that. And then, obviously, we've had Ingrid and now Chandra again today. We've had so much rain over the last few weeks that the ground is now saturated, so anything that falls is just running straight off. It can't be absorbed into the ground, and hence we're getting the floods that we now have, and that we're being asked to assist along other agencies, those that are impacted by them.
Yeah, we're just looking at some incredible images there from Axmouth in Devon, and you know, wherever you live in the UK, it feels like it has rained heavily every day of January. There has been no let up, as you said, you know, third storm that's directly affected your area. Talk to me about the knock-on effect of that. You talk about flooding. I understand your own town where you live has had flooding. So what have been the knock-on effects that you've had to go out and help with?
So, as part of what we've been asked to do, is we've been supporting the search and rescue groups from the area as they go out and basically check on the welfare of people that are either trapped in their homes or the floodwaters are approaching, and providing them with logistical support. So, literally driving them around, taking them to the various locations that they're dispatched to by the emergency services. We've also been working with the NHS. We've taken a number of nurses out from very early this morning to visit patients in the community where they've not been able to get there in their own cars because of the floodwaters or trees down in the area. So it's been quite a long day for a lot of our members.
Yeah, we were just looking at some of the flooded roads there and the vehicles trying to navigate that. Some of the smaller vehicles, you know, half submerged. Look, here it is again, this large truck trying to get through, and just the waves it creates there. I mean, that can often be the problem, is people thinking, where there's a will, there's a way. I've got to get to work, or I've got to get my kid to school. They will take a risk in that water, and therein can lie a huge part of the problem.
Yeah, indeed. You know, our members are trained to be well aware of the risks of being around water, whether it's stationary and just a bit of flooding, or whether it's flowing across a road, and how little water it takes to actually move a vehicle. Even our members drive 4x4s, so they're quite a substantial vehicle, but even those can be swept away very easily in fast-moving water. So we're very conscious of that, and our members, when they're out and about, are conscious of that and making decisions as they're driving around. Yeah, I am, or no, I'm not. And if they're not happy, then unfortunately they don't get to where maybe they need to get to. But yeah, we need to be, you know, we need to make sure that we're following the advice that is being given by the emergency services, local authorities, etc. When the storms are coming in, there's going to be flooding. Do not drive into floodwater. You're either going to get stuck, or you're going to get stuck and then block something else that needs to get through in an emergency.
Yeah, your organisation very much provides logistical support. You are volunteers, you're trained, and, you know, you're part of the team that people will think, I don't want to call emergency services for the help I need in this predicament, but I may well need the 4x4 team. What's the chain of command? How do you spring into action? If people need your help, how do they get in touch with you, and who do you decide who to respond to?
Yeah, so we predominantly, and our whole the way we're set up is that we work for the emergency services. So we work for the category 1 and 2 responders. So that's the fire brigade, the police, the ambulance service, and then the local authorities who come under category 2, along with the NHS, etc. And they call us out. And we have arrangements and agreements with them to respond and provide that logistical support that they need in time of need. If people need help, they need to contact the emergency services. You know, that's the primary thing, especially if there's a risk for life. That's the route to take. We don't respond directly to members of the public, unfortunately, because otherwise we'd be inundated and not able to provide the support that we do to the other agencies that we work with.
Yeah, the professionals prioritise. Listen, yeah. Stephen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And I'm going to take that as a good sign. You're not out on a call, which is good news, which means somebody doesn't need your help right now. But it meant that you had time to speak to us to talk about the plans that are in place for the people of Devon and Cornwall. Really appreciate your time, Stephen. Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, still to come here on the programme. Northern Ireland has become the first part of the UK to introduce changes to driving rules in a bid to protect young people. We'll have more details on the way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Northern Ireland is to become the first part of the United Kingdom to introduce graduated driving licences. GDLs impose restrictions on new drivers aimed at keeping them and other motorists safe. Among the proposals are nighttime driving restrictions on new drivers under the age of 24 and age-related passenger restrictions. Well, the Westminster Government published its own road safety strategy earlier this month, including a minimum learning period, but ministers are not currently considering GDLs. Well, I'm joined now by road safety campaigner Dr Ian Greenwood. Ian's daughter Alice was killed when their family car was hit by a young speeding driver. Ian, it's good to see you. We've spoken before, and I was keen to speak to you this evening because you hit a bit of a problem when the government said earlier this month GDLs were not on the table. However, given this news from Northern Ireland, do you feel like you could perhaps be a step closer in persuading them?
It's good to see you again, Sarah-Jane. Thank you for inviting me. I hope so. I was really pleased to hear about what Northern Ireland have decided to do, with a very clear plan and a date when it's going to start. So if you live in Northern Ireland, you're going to benefit from the fact that there will be less deaths and serious injuries if we follow the evidence that's available across the globe. So I do hope that with one country in Great Britain having a graduated driving licence in 2026, that will put pressure on the UK-wide government and the mainland of Britain to do something different to the minimum learning period, which is also welcome, but it's a lower level impact in terms of supporting young drivers.
It's expected that Northern Ireland will introduce this in October, and then, of course, it will be watched closely, I'm sure not just by the government, but by campaigners like yourself and other families that are part of your Forget Me Not Families organisation, you know, campaigning for GDLs and safer roads. I do want to talk about Alice because this is deeply personal for you, and I know that when you talk, it's to get the attention of other parents to say, look, you don't think this is a problem for you now, but it can be a problem for any of you at any point, and you won't see it coming.
Yeah, when Alice was killed, I'd never heard of graduated driving licensing. It's not something I was part of my consciousness. It was invisible to me. I used to work in the NHS, so I used to nurse and look after trauma patients. And so I knew from the victim's point of view, from the family's point of view, what that was like. Or I used to think I knew what that was like. But once Alice was killed by 5 young guys who decided that it would be a fun idea to have a race one dark October night, the result of that collision was Alice is now forever 12. We will never see her again. She's in our hearts, but not in our lives. But also her sister and her mum both ended up in separate intensive care units. And the young driver and his passenger, who are 18 and 16, also were killed. So that life, that night, so many lives were impacted by something that isn't necessarily the young driver's fault. We know from all the evidence that when you have a maturing brain, you have a young age, your neuroscience within your head is still developing, and you have loads of inexperience, and that is often the result of the crashes that cause devastation to families like mine. So both myself and many, many, many other families, some of which you've spoken to yourself, Sarah-Jane, have their children or family members in their hearts and try really hard to persuade politicians and governments to change what they can change to stop it happening to anybody else. That's part of our therapy, I guess, in terms of that drive to make improvements for other people. These crashes are preventable. That is what is so frustrating, I guess, that there are solutions available. Graduated driving licensing is one of the best examples of where the evidence is so clear over many, many decades from so many jurisdictions. Sky sent a journalist to Canada to look at it themselves, which you featured.
Yep.
Very significant improvements in driver experience, but also in not killing people on our roads.
Yeah, Dan Whitehead, our correspondent, travelling, as you said, to other countries to see GDLs in action and see the evidence of how it saved lives, because the counter-argument to this, and it has been from the Westminster government, is this would restrict young drivers. But for families like yours, your argument is clear. It's not. It's protecting them and those around them, because you're in no doubt that, you know, had these young drivers that killed Alice been subjected to GDLs, that scenario just simply wouldn't have played out. And I just want to get a word from you, Ian, while the Westminster government watches and waits, and while other countries watch and wait to see what happens when it does come into force in Northern Ireland, what's the impact of that? Because the statistics about the number of lives lost because of young drivers is astounding.
It is. And I think one of the things that isn't talked about enough is we spend an awful lot of time, whether that's politicians or the media or just the general discussion on social media, we talk a lot about let's not pick on the young driver. But lots of people don't know that actually 50% of the people who are killed or seriously injured are strangers, like Alice. Alice didn't know the two guys that were killed that night. And we don't focus on the so-called other road users, people who are walking, people who stood at the bus stop, the pregnant mum who stood by the motorway waiting for the vehicle recovery. We don't talk about those people enough. So I would like both to have GDL, but also I'd like to have a balance in terms of who we actually talk about. Yes, we want to support young drivers. Yes, we want to reduce the risk that they experience because of things they can't control, which is why GDL is so important, but also the people that impact, families like mine and many, many others. And I do think sometimes that government don't really talk about that. They just talk about the inconvenience. So if you say to me, what would you prefer, 6 months or a year's worth of inconvenience that restricted the young driver from carrying their passengers, or a live daughter? It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, Ian, yours as ever, a compelling and powerful story. Dr. Ian Greenwood there, who lost his young daughter Alice, just 12, because of the actions of a speeding young driver. Always really appreciate your time. Keep telling your story. And of course, we will follow the progress of GDLs in Northern Ireland and elsewhere. And, you know, as you and your families believe, in Westminster as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So to come here on the UK Tonight, support for pubs and for music venues today who have been sounding the alarm over changes to business rates. Now, pubs and music venues in England are going to see a 15% cut to their business rate bills from April. This is part of a government support package announced today. Well, this announcement follows widespread concern across the hospitality sector, with warnings of mass closures and job losses. The industry warning that the measures announced today are actually totally inadequate. Our business and economics correspondent Paul Kelso has this report.
Publican here, pretty pleased with this news, perhaps not least because the Chancellor herself was here talking up what is undeniably a rewriting of the budget, another U-turn. I'll leave it to others to add up how many of those there have been. I can tell you about what the impact on rates has been. The Chancellor made a big deal in her budget that she was cutting business rates. She said that would benefit businesses of all kind, benefit the hospitality sector in particular, because she was cutting rates most of all for pubs, hotels and restaurants. Unfortunately, while the rate was going down, the bills pubs were paying and other business was going up. That's because there's a few things that go into rates. The value on which those rates are based. All pubs, all businesses in the country have been revalued for the first time in 3 years. Pubs, on average, their valuations are up 30%. So you might be paying less tax, but you're paying on a higher number. So it goes up. There's also 40% rates relief that was a COVID-era measure. That was being withdrawn. So pubs, when they did the sums, looked at this, and while there was some more relief coming from the government, they said, we are being hammered here. There has been a pretty effective campaign. Labour MPs, including the Chancellor, have been barred from their locals. So today, a climb down. There's a 15% relief, 15% cut to this year's bill, which will then be frozen for 2 years, not just for pubs, but for music venues. And the Chancellor, when I spoke to her, defended the decision to change policy and set out why she'd done it. Let's hear from her.
We had to increase taxes at the budget to be able to afford the public services in a world that has changed, where there are more threats, there is more pressure on defence budgets. There is an increasing need to build our security and resilience at home, whilst at the same time turbulence that is causing uncertainty around trade. So we did have to raise money. We listen, though, when people raise concerns, and we look at the detail of that and try to make sure we get it right.
Many pubs are going to be better off, or at least no worse off as a result of this change. There's a signal here that there might be some relief coming for the hotel trade, which is still facing steep increases. We wait and see if this is the last rewriting of that budget.
Let's get reaction now. I'm joined by pub and restaurant owner Andy Lennox, who has been part of a campaign to bar Labour MPs from hospitality venues as a result of that budget back in November. Really good of you to join us on the programme tonight. You heard the Chancellor there, her explanation for this discount that you're getting. She said she's listened to you. What's your response to her?
You know, I think the great piece is that actually they have listened a bit. The problem is they've brought down taxes to before the budget, so they haven't actually cut anything. They've just taken out what the rise that they were going to put in, and they've only done it for a very, very small part of the sector. Don't get me wrong, I own pubs, but I also own restaurants, and you know, this whole campaign that we created was all about the whole industry as a whole, and trying to explain to Labour and to the rest of the political parties that we're quite a big industry and we're quite a big deal and we employ a lot of people. And we were struggling before the first Reeves budget. That then put a lot of taxation on. We then got the second Reeves budget, which put a lot of taxation on. We've just removed that little bit of taxation that she's put on in the second budget. So we're not out of the woods yet in any way or shape or form. Most people here will be sitting and looking at their bills and kind of going, okay, they haven't changed. They've not gone up too much, but they haven't gone down. So we're kind of where we were before. And what we've been saying for a very long time is there needs to be proper tax reform in this country. You know, we as an industry have grown up massively. The tax system needs to grow up with that. And we need VAT in line with Europe at 13%, where they value their hospitality sectors.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The Chancellor saying she's listening. Perhaps your message to her is, you know, you need to listen a bit closer, because you mentioned there the hospitality sector as a whole. On last night's programme, we had Claire Patak on the show. She is the owner of Violet's Cakes in East London. And, you know, they've provided cakes for Charlie XCX. They've been on the cover of Vogue magazine. And she said, look, you know, we're suffering in silence. We haven't made as much noise as pub landlords, but perhaps, you know, cafes and restaurants, cake makers should, because hospitality and entertainment as a whole, like you said, it's one big unit, but you're being treated in piecemeal.
But that's because if they can divide and conquer, then they win. And ultimately, this campaign has never been just about pubs. Don't get me wrong, the pubs have captured the imaginations and the hearts of the nation, and that's been really good to get our message through. But the first ever place that banned this was a restaurant. The second was a pub. You know, hospitality is hospitality. You can't turn around and say, I want to support one part of it and not the other. And ultimately, I'd sit down with Rachel Reeves and explain the taxation system to her in very, very simple terms that would actually allow her to understand what we think is the key driver to being able to actually make our economy grow. The hospitality employs over 3 million people. We are the engine growth. We are the engine room of the economy, and we provide over 60 billion in taxation.
Yeah.
All we're saying is, let us help you, but you have to understand us first. And I think they're slightly starting to get there, just not quite there yet.
Yeah, and you'll keep on talking until the message of what you actually need, what will actually make a difference, gets through. Talk to me about, I mean, you talk about tax reform. That is, that is a big thing to do for this country. But in terms of what would help your sector as a whole, talk to me about the kind of measures that you would have liked the Chancellor to walk into a pub today and, you know what, help is here. I've finally come up with this because I've listened to you. What would you have liked her to have said?
But there is only one message, and this is what I've been trying to get through to everybody. It's VAT. Just cut the VAT in line with Europe. Like the rest of Europe, the average is 13% because they value their hospitality. It's seen as a proper career over in Europe and in America, whereas in England it's some kind of, a stopgap or something like that. And ultimately, that's all you need to do because that fixes everything. We've given them the framework. We've done the piece of work that they need to do to see what that looks like and what that kind of, what's that's going to happen. It's going to bring down the cost of living. It's going to bring down inflation. Unemployment will start to come down. All these things from one simple lever. But the problem is they won't actually listen. They do what they want to do, and they've kind of taken a little bit and said, well, we'll tinker around the edges here and hopefully they'll go away. Quite frankly, I'd quite like to sleep, and I haven't slept for about 60 days.
Yeah,
but,
I was going to ask what it's been like to carry all this on your shoulders because, you're an employer. It's not just your business. You have employees that, have families and, there's so much connected to a business. It's not just the business owner sitting down with a spreadsheet and going through taxes. There are real life consequences to this.
And it's not just the employees that I have, it's all the suppliers. Every single part of hospitality is a little ecosystem. And they all add up to major driver to the economy, quite frankly. And we sit late at night trying to figure out how we're going to make this all work, where we've gone from this kind of, let's make 10%, 15%, and now we're making 3 or 4%. Yeah. And you're sitting there going, how am I going to pay the bills? How do I support all of the various different people that rely on me? Because it's not the 250 employees. It's the thousands and thousands of people that are in the ecosystem. And they all rely on you. And, I think if people understood that more, and I do believe we're getting through in that sense, I do believe that actually, we've captured the nation's, imagination. They're starting to understand what we do and why we do it. And, every single part of life evolves around a hospitality. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be at a funeral, you could be, at a wedding, you could be, celebrating a job, or actually, you could be, commiserating because you'd lost it. But ultimately, every single part of your life will have a hospitality moment. And not only that, and one of the things we're trying to talk about, and we won't get onto it too much because we won't have time, but that youth unemployment piece, we employ so many young people who have come out of COVID, who don't, I have 30 applications for every single one of my young people, and I can't afford to employ them. And all we're saying is just look at what we've put on the table. We're saying that the tax reform, like in Europe, with VAT at 13%, and you will see massive growth in this country, and you will see a country start to grow. When we're not operating properly, the nation is not operating properly.
Well, listen, Andy, we've heard you loud and clear tonight, and I know we're going to talk about this again. I don't think your complete ban on Labour MPs coming into your pub is lifted quite yet. They're going to have to go
we had a long
to get them back in through the door.
We had a long conversation about it today, and whilst I may have liked to have lifted it, because actually, quite frankly, I do want to engage.
It's yet another incentive for the Chancellor to get in touch and talk to you properly. Andy Lennox, a pub and restaurant owner, we will talk again on this issue. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. Still to come on the programme. One battle after another leads the... How apt is that? That leads the pack at the BAFTAs and recognition too for some homegrown talent. We'll take you through the nominations and the day's sports news. England sealing a rare away series win against Sri Lanka.
This program is delivered by DHL, the official logistics partner of ESL.
Welcome to the DHL Sports Hub on Sky News. Coming up, Steve Borthwick tells his England team how he wants them to approach the Six Nations as they go for their first title for 6 years. And it might be a new year, but it's the same old Scotty Scheffler on golf's PGA Tour. We hear from him after he hits another career landmark with his latest tournament victory. But we start with Formula One and what appears to be an upbeat Lewis Hamilton after Ferrari unveiled their new SF26 car for the first time. Hamilton went through the whole campaign without a single Grand Prix podium for the first time in his career last year. But now he's optimistic of finding a way forward once again as he prepares to resume his search for an 8th world title.
Will careers be defined by this latest Ferrari? Lewis Hamilton drove its first lap at a misty Maranello. Can it banish the memories of what he called a nightmare first season in red? This year's radical regulation change might suit his late-breaking driving style. 1,000 or so Ferrari fans cheered his first few seconds on track. Will he give them more to cheer about once the season starts?
The regulation shift is monumental. I mean, it's the biggest regulation shift I think our sport has seen, at least in my time. But every single time that it has been a shift into a new regulation, it's been a massive challenge. Everyone starts from scratch, so it really levels the playing field. I think the driver's role is going to be critical in not only pulling laps together and delivering good results, but managing the power unit, managing the power through a lap, and also the new kind of DRS system that we have with the wings, the front and the rear wing moving, and then helping the team navigate. And the only way is through collaboration and through communication. And that's really where I think the drivers get to play a really key role in helping them discover exactly where we need to be going with these cars.
It's an equally big year for Charles Leclerc, his 8th at Ferrari. He's 30 next year. Has his career plateaued?
There's a lot of work in the background, and only the track will talk once we will put the car on the ground. But the preparation, the hard work and the motivation is there. And also the fact, again, that we've been working for so many years together definitely helps for that change.
Team principal Fred Vasseur spoke of alignment amongst the Ferrari leadership. Awarded a new deal by Chairman John Elkann last season, is his biggest concern. Mercedes have built another dominant engine, amid claims that they and Red Bull have cleverly exploited the rules.
We put a lot of energy, time and effort on the 2026 project. We started 1 year ago. But what is exciting in the new regulation is that everybody probably took different direction, different path, and we will have to be a very open mind at the beginning of the season to react to every single circumstances. And this is very important to have a stability into the organization, to have a good group of people used to work together with the same focus, and it will be key for the season.
Vasseur has yet to confirm who'll engineer Hamilton this year, having moved Riccardo Adami to a new role. With Hamilton himself urging significant change within the team, are they still in transition? 18 years since Ferrari's last F1 title, finding that winning formula has been painfully elusive. Craig Slater, Sky Sports.
So it remains to be seen if Ferrari can bounce back, and for now it's McLaren who are the team to emulate after their back-to-back constructors' titles. Both of their drivers were in contention for the individual title up to the final race of the season, with Lando Norris eventually finishing 13 points clear of Oscar Piastri. McLaren's attempts to manage competition within the team often came under scrutiny as they allowed Norris and Piastri to compete freely with one another. And team principal Andrea Stella says they'll now look to simplify that situation.
Definitely we confirmed that we want to keep going racing like that. You know, inspired by the same principle, the fairness, the equality between the drivers, the sportsmanship, and so on. At the same time, like anything in Formula One and in life, there's always something to learn. So we reviewed all the situations in which we could do better, in which we could do even simpler in a way, such that the work, the energy associated with racing that way is the most efficient.
Elsewhere, Williams are missing this week's private test event in Barcelona after delays in the development of their car. Instead, they're doing sim work virtually with a view to being ready for the first of 2 official 3-day pre-season tests in Bahrain next month. Alpine are in Spain this week after they revealed their 2026 car with their drivers Pierre Gasly and Franco Colapinto, and were one of the first teams out on the track on day 1 yesterday. But could Christian Horner be about to invest in them too? He can't return to the sport until April under the terms of his payoff from Red Bull, having been dismissed as team principal last summer.
What we're looking at is Horner being part of a number of consortia looking at buying a stake in the team, which has been owned for the last few years by Otro Capital. This was a very high-profile dilution of Renault's ownership of Alpine. It included the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Rory McIlroy and Anthony Joshua as stakeholders in this F1 team. But the value has doubled in the last few years. Might it make sense for Otro to cash in on this investment, to sell out? Christian Horner wants to own part of a team as well as be involved in running it. But the last time I checked in with him, it was one of a number of avenues he was exploring, and it was felt to be relatively early days to say that this was absolutely his focus in terms of the #1 avenue by which he looked to get back into F1 again.
On to rugby union, and England head coach Steve Borthwick has encouraged his team to attack the tournament as they look to claim their first Six Nations in 6 years. Borthwick's side have won each of their last 11 test matches and start their campaign against Wales at Twickenham a week on Saturday.
I sense a group that is hungry to develop, hungry to win every test match that the team goes into. And we talk about it, we're clear on what we want to achieve, clear on where we want to go. I'm also really excited by the way people are talking about the team, the way people are talking so positively and feel part of this group on the journey. You know, and the players feel so connected with the supporters. So coming to the start of this tournament, we're clear on what we want to achieve by the end of it. It's going to come to how we start it. The players come in ready to play test rugby. The players come in with an attitude to attack the tournament, to play brave, to play big, to play fast. And being ready to train at the intensity we need to be able to bring those performances onto the grass.
Now, Scotty Scheffler looks like he's going to be the man to beat in golf again this season after he marked his first appearance of the year with victory at the American Express in California. He won by 4 shots and in doing so joined Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus as the only players to win 20 PGA Tour events and 4 majors before the age of 30. Scheffler had started the final day a shot off the pace, but pulled clear as a 6-under par round of 66 left him on 27 under overall, with another piece of history to his name.
It means a lot. You know, it was a challenging week. I did a good job of staying patient and executing when I needed to, and today was another really solid day, out on the course.
Just seeing you celebrate with your wife and Bennett as well. What would the young version of Scotty Scheffler make of the Scotty Scheffler that we know today?
Yeah, I might be a bit confused. I don't really know, to be honest with you. I always dreamed of being able to play on the PGA Tour, and it's a blessing to be able to be out here and compete. And it's an even bigger blessing to be able to win some tournaments. And I don't know what he would say.
I mean, overall, you've got your #1 fans over there. What would you love for them to make of your performance, but not just as a golfer, as a person overall?
Oh, well, you know, I couldn't do what I do out here, you know, week in, week out if it wasn't for their support. You know, my wife is my biggest supporter, doing tons of stuff behind the scenes in order to get me out here and ready to play, whether it's waking up at, you know, 5:15 this morning to make me breakfast this week, or, you know, packing up most of our stuff today so we can get home. And just little things that nobody sees. You know, she's my biggest supporter, my best friend. And, yeah.
This program is delivered by DHL, the official logistics partner of VSL.